The Prime Minister says France may have breached the post-Brexit trade deal in the row over fishing rights. He's expected to raise it with the French President at the G20 summit in Rome, but admits relations between the two countries are difficult.
There's some turbulence in the relationship. If one of our partners decides to breach the trade and cooperation agreement that we struck, then obviously that's a matter that we'll have to pursue.
Lawyers for Prince Andrew ask a New York judge to dismiss a civil lawsuit against him.
Sweeping pass and kick onto the... Oh my goodness.
And Scotland score 10 tries as they thrash Tonga in this afternoon's rugby. Good afternoon. Boris Johnson says there is turbulence in the UK's relations with France as the dispute over post-Brexit fishing rights continues to escalate. France has threatened to block some British boats from its ports if the row over fishing licences is not resolved by Tuesday. The UK government says it could take legal proceedings against France. Well, Mr Johnson and the French President, Emmanuel Macron, are expected to discuss the fishing row tomorrow on the margins of the G20 summit in Rome, from where our political editor Laura Koonsberg reports.
Old rivalries and fierce fights. Rome's Colosseum has hosted a few. But it's the UK and France this time, both flexing their strength. France threatening to disrupt trade if their boats don't get more access to fish the channel.
Do you think that France is trying to punish the UK with this row over fishing permits?
I think that the things that unite France and the UK are far more important than things that divide us, Laura. And I must say, we are a bit worried that France may be about to become in breach, or is already in breach of the trade and cooperation agreement that we've struck.
I mean, President Macron's going around questioning your credibility. You've been summoning the French ambassador into the Foreign Office in London. I mean, what are you actually going to do about it?
Get on and do the things that matter to both of us, and make sure that we work together on tackling the big issues that face the world. There's some turbulence in the relationship. If one of our partners decides to breach the trade and cooperation agreement that we struck, then obviously that's a matter that we'll have to pursue.
The Prime Minister may want to play nice with the French President and their other high-ranking friends, but if Macron goes further, that power hug might not last. Boris Johnson's Lieutenant David Frost wrote online that French rhetoric was problematic and troubling and warned the UK could trigger legal action, a dispute settlement mechanism, before too long. The fist bump isn't yet a dramatic punch-up over channel permits. Boris Johnson has to use his joke, much bigger fish to fry, getting wealthy big countries, India and especially China, to give up more cash and give up more carbon than they've promised so far.
People are often very conceited about history and about our civilization. We think that we can be on a remorseless forward march when actually we can be actively conniving in our own decline and fall. And what we need to do is to ensure that at the COP summit next week, the world leaders come together.
Are you disappointed with what China has come forward so far?
Look, and they've made progress on overseas financing of coal. That's a good thing. What China, I think, needs to do is to find ways of making a more ambitious, nationally determined.
But they're not going to do that. They've published what they've said they're going to do, and it's not enough, is it? You must be disappointed.
Let's see where we can get to.
In September, you rated the chances of success in Glasgow at 6 out of 10. What would you say this morning?
I'd say they're about the same. Look at that.
Boris Johnson hopes he'll make history, brokering an agreement to slow down the warming of the planet.
It is the metaphor. Either COP succeeds or the Dark Ages. That's what I'm saying. Or could be the Dark Ages.
But he's trying to corral many dozens of countries. There is certainly no one emperor who can rule supreme. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Rome.
Well, aside from climate change, the COVID pandemic and relations with Iran are high on the agenda at the summit in Rome. And today, G20 leaders urged the Iranian president to enter negotiations on its nuclear programme. Our North America editor John Sopel reports from the summit in Rome.
good to go. And with that thumbs up from the American president, the biggest gathering of world leaders since COVID arrived could get underway. And everyone's relearning social etiquette. To mask or not to mask, unmask. To shake hands or not, shake. And with everyone back in the same room, the host, the Italian Prime Minister, made a tentative call to order.
I think we can start.
And after so long apart, he urged a renewed commitment to working together.
The multilateralism is the best answer to the problems we face today. In many ways, it's the only possible answer. From the pandemic to climate change to fair and equitable taxation, going it alone, it's simply not an option.
The great set piece of these occasions is the family photo. But then something unexpected happened. The men in white coats arrived. No, not to take them away, but to underline the role that first responders have played since the pandemic took hold, and how to speed up vaccine distribution to the poorest nations. Boris Johnson is here to shake hands, yes, but also to twist arms ahead of the climate change summit in Glasgow next week. There, thousands were out on the streets today, ahead of COP26 getting underway. And there were similar protests here in Rome as well. The draft communiqué that's been agreed talks about the urgent need to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But for all the words in this draft communiqué, and there are a lot of them, it's very short on detailed commitments or concrete measures to limit carbon emissions. Boris Johnson is going to have his work cut out in Glasgow next week. John Sopel, BBC News, Rome.
Well, live to Rome now and back to our political editor, Laura Koonsberg. And Laura, it's a time of really intense international diplomacy with this G20 summit, followed by the Glasgow Climate Change Summit. And yet it's still the fishing row with France that is dominating the headlines.
Well, Ben, it's still dominating some people's thoughts because it hasn't been sorted out yet, and there seem to be increasingly strong feelings on both sides. Yeah, the French have made it clear that they're pretty sore about not, in their view, getting the kind of access that they should do to fishing in the Channel. But on the UK side, I think there's a sense of being increasingly fed up at the kinds of messages, the kind of rhetoric that has been emerging from Paris, which has pushed the Cabinet Minister, Lord Frost, this afternoon to threaten that the UK might actually take legal action if any of France's hypothetical threats were to turn into real, actual, concrete actions. But at the same time, don't forget how much is on the agenda here. As we were just hearing from John, world leaders have been talking about Iran, they've been talking about the economy, they've been talking about how everybody gets their act together after all of the emergency and traumas of COVID. And for the British government, at the very top of that list is this pressing issue of brokering an agreement that would look good, would mean something at the climate summit, which gets underway now in less than 48 hours. So the French spat is very much a diplomatic distraction. There's no question about that, and it's not going to disappear anytime soon. But it is not at number one of the list of the very many issues that the Prime Minister's got to focus on.
Laura, thank you very much. Laura Koonsberg in Rome. Lawyers for Prince Andrew have accused a woman of trying to achieve another payday at the Duke's expense. Virginia Giuffre says she was sexually abused by him as a teenager. Prince Andrew has always denied the claims and has now asked a judge to dismiss a civil lawsuit against him. Is our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell.
After months when he's appeared to want to ignore the civil lawsuit brought by Virginia Giuffre, Prince Andrew has now instructed his lawyers to fight to clear his name. The Queen's second son has been accused by Ms Giuffre of sexual abuse when she was 17 years old and thus a minor under US state law. In papers filed in New York last night, the Prince's lawyers have asked a court to dismiss the lawsuit or to require Ms Giuffre to provide a more definitive statement of her allegations. The court papers state, Prince Andrew never sexually abused or assaulted Giuffre. He unequivocally denies Giuffre's false allegations against him. The document goes on, Giuffre has initiated this baseless lawsuit against Prince Andrew to achieve another payday at his expense and at the expense of those closest to him. A second argument advanced by Andrew's lawyers is that Miss Giuffre is not entitled to bring a lawsuit against him. They claim she forfeited that right in 2009 when she sued this man, Jeffrey Epstein, the person who was said to have organised the sex trafficking. Epstein took his own life in prison 2 years ago. Epstein had been a friend of Andrew, but the Prince's lawyers say the 2009 court settlement included a clause which precludes Miss Giuffre from taking any further court action. It will now be for the New York court to decide whether or not the case against the Prince should be dismissed. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
The Prime Minister says he's spoken to the Queen this week and that she is on very good form. Yesterday, Buckingham Palace announced the 95-year-old monarch would not undertake official visits for a fortnight. Speaking in Rome, Mr Johnson said the important thing was that she had to follow her doctor's advice.
I spoke to Her Majesty, as I do every week this week, and she's on very good form. She's just got to follow the advice of her doctors and get some rest, and I think that's the important thing, and I'm sure the whole country wishes her well.
The government's latest coronavirus figures for the UK show that there were 41,278 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means on average there were 40,859 new cases reported per day in the last week. There were 8,983 people in hospital with COVID as of Thursday. 166 deaths were reported. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. On average, in the last week, 157 related deaths were recorded every day. And over 7.5 million people have received their booster jab. This includes third doses for those with certain health conditions. Right, let's get a roundup of all the day's sports news for you now. Here's Ollie Foster at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi, Ollie.
Hello there, Ben. Rugby Union's autumn internationals are underway. Wales have just started their match against New Zealand in Cardiff. Scotland have already beaten Tonga 60 points to 14. Kyle Steyn scored 4 of their 10 tries at Murrayfield. Ben Croucher reports.
The warm-up act for the autumn internationals. They call it test rugby, but the Tongan intimidation soon turned timid. Fresh faces aplenty for both sides, few fresher than 21-year-old Rufus McLean, few fiercer. The debut try, the first of many. From force to finesse, twinkle toes near the touchline. A second try 8 minutes after his first.
It's easy, this international rugby lark.
So easy that Kyle Steyn had helped himself to a hat-trick by half-time. Scotland were out of sight, just like George Turner, hidden beneath the bodies, points racking up. The Tongans are nothing if not tenacious and earned a try of their own, only for Scotland to respond with 3 more. Steyn's 4th, rounding off a 60-14 win. Scotland are firing already in the autumn, but tougher tests will come. Ben Croucher, BBC News.
Staying with Rugby Union, Leicester Tigers have maintained their 100% start to the Premiership season. The leaders beat local rivals Northampton Saints 55-26. 17 out of 7. Monroe went over twice. There are also wins for Wasps, Bristol and Worcester. Chelsea have made the most of their title rivals slipping up today to move 3 points clear at the top of the Premier League. Reece James scored 2 of their goals in a 3-0 win at Newcastle. Second place Liverpool, they drew 2-2 at Anfield against Brighton. 10-man Manchester City lost 2-0 to Crystal Palace at home. Arsenal are up to 5th in the table. Emile Smith-Rowe scored the pick of their goals in the 2-0 win at Leicester City in the lunchtime kick-off. There are also wins for Southampton and Burnley. And with Rangers playing tomorrow, Celtic missed out on the chance to move to the top of the Scottish Premiership. They missed an injury time penalty as they were held to a goalless draw at home to Livingston. Elsewhere, Aberdeen beat Hearts 2-1. They've moved up into the top half of the table. St Johnstone won 1-0 at Dundee United. Dundee beat St Mirren 1-0. England's cricketers need 126 runs to beat Australia at the T20 World Cup after winning the toss and choosing to field first. Chris Jordan was the pick of the England bowlers in Dubai with 3 wickets as they bowled Australia out for 125 in their latest Super 12 match. Australia had been wobbling on 21 for 4. Well, that England replies just getting going now. They're going along very nicely indeed, well on course to beat Australia. You can follow that on the BBC Sport website. where you can listen to commentary of the match and also watch selected video highlights so far. That's all the sport for now. Ben.
Thanks, Ollie. And the late news is at 10 past 10. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a very good evening.